Good morning. Bonjour. Ça va bien? Everyone's doing well? So today I have the privilege, alongside my colleague, Minister Naqvi, of introducing the Safer Ontario Act 2017. The nature of policing and community safety has changed significantly since the Police Services Act was first introduced in 1990. The issues faced by police services and their members today are far more complex than when the Act was developed. La nature des services policiers et de la sécurité communautaire a considérablement changé depuis la présentation de la loi sur les services policiers en 1990. Les questions auxquelles sont confrontés les services de police et leurs membres aujourd'hui sont beaucoup plus complexes qu'à l'époque où la loi a été élaborée. Crime has become increasingly complex and global in nature with the rapid acceleration of technology and increased interactions with vulnerable individuals have called for more effective tools and systems to enhance police response and better support vulnerable individuals. We recognize that these new realities require a transformation of our policing and community safety services delivery framework. The strategy for a Safer Ontario acknowledges the significance of this new reality and addresses the challenge it is presenting. The Safer Ontario Act is a comprehensive public safety legislation package that, if passed, would represent the largest transformation of policing in a generation. La loi pour un Ontario plus sécuritaire est un bloc législatif complet en matière de sécurité publique qui, s'il est adopté, représentera la plus profonde transformation des services policiers depuis une génération. The bill is a accumulation of over 5 years, and I want to thank everyone who has helped make this happen for their hard work and dedication. This is an exceptional example of collaboration between a broad array of officials, stakeholders, and everyday Ontarians. If passed, this new legislation will support community safety and well-being planning in response to the needs and current realities of our communities. The proposed legislation is part of our government's commitment to build stronger, safer community through our strategy for a Safer Ontario. This bill will also address his recommendation coming from Justice Tulloch's independent review of Ontario's police oversight system in April of 2017. The changes we are proposing represent the largest transformation to policing and community safety in Ontario in over 25 years and will result in even stronger, safer communities. There are several parts to this bill, and if passed, they will repeal and replace the Police Services Act, amend the Coroners Act, and create the following acts: the Missing Person Act, the Forensic Laboratories Act, the Policing Oversight Act, and the Ontario Policing Discipline Tribunal Act. So, the bill is 417 pages. So I'm going to go in a bit of detail about what's in the bill, so please bear with me. First, the repeal and the replacement of the Police Services Act. Change are long overdue. The last time the Act was revised, there was no internet, the Blue Jays won the World Series, and you needed a briefcase to carry your cell phone. Transformation is necessary in the face of limited budget, changing demographics, rapid technological innovation, and ever-changing demands on police services. Years of work and extensive consultations with our policing partners and our law enforcement communities, as well as with Ontarians from across the province, went into this change, and I know we have several of you here today, and thank you for coming to this announcement. If passed, the new Police Services Act would modernize Ontario's policing framework with a focus in 4 key areas: shifting to a collaborative approach to community safety and well-being planning, outlining police responsibilities and community safety service delivery, enhancing police oversight and accountability to the public, and ensuring sustainability of First Nation policing. The new Police Services Act would transition the province to a new and holistic approach to community safety and well-being planning. One where municipalities would lead the development and the implementation of mandatory local community safety well-being plans that address the local needs and issues. There are some communities who have already begun creating these plans, and I want to recognize some of them. Communities like Ottawa, Alton, Lanark County in Eastern Ontario. To be successful, community safety and well-being planning must be expanded beyond our police services. And to be effective, community safety and well-being planning needs the collaboration of partners from a wide range of sectors. We need this collaborative approach to identify and address local risk and to bring together the police, our healthcare, our social services, education, and other sectors as necessary. This kind of forward-looking planning will help communities bend the cost curves not only of policing, but also of all emergency services. We need to move away from a model of emergency crisis response to one of preventing crime before it happens. Community safety starts in the community with a proactive approach that focuses on well-being, because community well-being is the cornerstone of public safety. But it is also a shared responsibility. The second area of the new Police Services Act is about outlining police responsibilities on how community safety services are delivered. Let me first acknowledge the great work that is being done by police services across Ontario and the successes that they are achieving. We have some of the best trained officers anywhere, and Ontario continues to be one of the safest jurisdictions in North America. Since 2003, Ontario's crime rate has dropped by 34%, and Ontario's violent crime rate dropped by 27%. Since 2005, Ontario continues to report the lowest crime rate among provinces and territories. We're proud of these numbers and are determined to maintain and even to improve on them. The new Police Services Act will help us to do that. The new act would modernize several aspects of policing, including clearly outlining police responsibility, modernizing the Special Constables program, ensuring consistent education, training, and standards for all police services, and modernizing the police disciplinary process. Outlining police responsibilities is an important role of this modernization. For the first time, we will be clearly defining the roles that can only be performed by a sworn police officer, and policing will always and only be provided by police services. Clarifying police responsibilities and working with partners on further identifying areas where other personnel could be used will result in more effective use of police resources. But rest assured, when you call 911 and you need a police officer will come to your call. The changes will also make sure police officers across the province are equipped with the education, training, and tools they need to perform their job effectively, and will ensure a consistent approach to policing across the province. We will also establish a Public Safety Institute. It will be a center of excellence to inform police services delivery in Ontario that supports evidence-based decision-making, conduct leading-edge research, and provides advice on policing standards. The police disciplinary process will be updated and will enable Chief of Police to pursue suspension without pay as an interim measure under specific circumstances. A third area of the Police Services Act will address the police accountability to the public. The new act proposed significant change to Municipal Police Services Board and the Ontario Provincial Police Governance to ensure continued public trust. The act would also establish an Inspector General to independently oversee and monitor police services and police services boards. The Inspector General would have a mandate to ensure the delivery of adequate and effective policing across Ontario. These changes will make police services and their local police services board more representative and accountable to the communities they serve. Other measures in the bill will increase diversity on boards and add new requirements for board members to complete mandatory training, including in areas such as human rights and cultural competency. Minister Naqvi will have more to say about the oversight in a moment. Ensuring the sustainability of First Nation policing is the fourth pillar of our strategy. The new Police Services Act will introduce a framework that provides First Nation communities with choices in determining a model of policing that meets their needs. For the first time, First Nation can choose to establish their own police services board. Those that do not wish to do so will have the ability to continue with their current frameworks as they see fit. These changes would ensure First Nations receive culturally responsive, sustainable, accountable, and equitable policing that has the flexibility to address specific community needs on their own terms. This bill also proposed several other changes to build a safer Ontario. And they include changes to the Coroner's Act to improve Ontario's inquest system, the creation of a provincial accreditation framework for forensic laboratories across the province so they have a common operational standards, and a new Missing Person Act to assist police in responding to missing persons occurrence when there's no evidence of criminal activity while protecting privacy. This was a key recommendation of the inquest into the deaths of 7 Indigenous youth in Thunder Bay and fulfills a commitment in the long-term strategy to end violence against Indigenous women. The Safer Ontario Act is about shifting to a collaborative approach to community safety and well-being planning. As I said earlier, the changes we are proposing today represent the largest transformation to Ontario's policing and community safety in over 25 years. Comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, les modifications que nous proposons aujourd'hui représentent la plus profonde transformation des services policiers et de la sécurité communautaire de l'Ontario depuis plus de 25 ans. They will create stronger, safer communities where people get the services they need when and where they need them most. Elles créeront des collectivités plus fortes et plus sûres, où les gens peuvent obtenir des services dont ils ont besoin, quand et où ils en ont besoin. So I would like to ask Minister Naqvi, who's been patiently standing beside me, to present the police oversight aspect of today's bills.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to Minister Lalonde for her presentation and for the hard work that she has done and the commitment she's shown to this landmark legislation. This is truly a momentous day for Ontario, for the police services who work tirelessly to protect us, and for the advocates who asked the tough questions. Later today, we will be proposing the largest transformation to policing in a generation. In addition to the new changes outlined by my colleague, Minister Lalonde, these changes will also ensure a more open and accountable police oversight system. And above all, our hope is that these changes will make people, no matter the color of their skin, what neighborhood they call home, or their mental health status, feel protected and safe in their communities. We have all heard the growing concerns that some communities, in particular Black and Indigenous communities, feel unjustly harmed at the hands of police. We've witnessed such tensions across North America, and we have learned that Ontario is not immune. I have a deep respect and appreciation for more than 26,000 police officers in Ontario who risk their lives every day to help keep us safe. I also believe it is important to ensure the appropriate checks and balances are in place so that the public can feel confident in the police who are sworn to protect them. Likewise, for the police themselves, having the faith of the people they serve is essential for them to be able to do their jobs. And so, last year, we asked Justice Michael Tulloch to provide recommendations to strengthen police oversight in Ontario. Justice Tulloch undertook an extensive, year-long review of the police oversight system in the province. The report he released in April outlined a number of recommendations for the Ministry of the Attorney General, 119 to be exact, which called on the government to make sweeping changes to improve accountability and transparency in policing in Ontario. And that is exactly what we are doing here today. Our government has taken Justice Tulloch's advice, and we are moving forward with legislation that will implement his recommendations. My hope is that these changes will help forge a more open, trusting relationship between the police and the public. And we know that trust starts with openness, with information. We're proposing to take an open by default approach to sharing information with the public about investigations and keep the public better informed about the investigative process. As many of you know, we have already started publicly posting current SIU reports online and have committed to post all past and future reports. And if this legislation is passed, it would mean greater transparency in how these reports are prepared in the future. For example, if criminal charges are laid, the SIU would publicly report on details, including the officer's name, the offense charged, when the charge was laid, and the date of the next court appearance. If no criminal charges are laid, the SIU would post an explanation for why the officer was not charged, as well as a detailed account of events that led to the investigation, including evidence. But we knew we could go further, so proposed changes contain measures to increase public trust and confidence in the oversight bodies themselves. The Ontario Ombudsman has reported receiving complaints about policing oversight bodies. But since it has only limited jurisdiction over some of these oversight bodies, it is unable to do anything about them. To allow for greater accountability, we are proposing to allow the Ombudsman to investigate matters related to all three oversight bodies. But key to that increased transparency is ensuring that the public actually understands which oversight body does what. And so, to better reflect their mandates, the SIU will become the Ontario Special Investigations Unit. As recommended by Justice Tulloch, the renamed OSIU mandate would be expanded both for who and what it can investigate. The OSIU would now be able to investigate former police officers, off-duty officers in certain circumstances, and volunteer members of a police service. And we have also gone beyond Justice Tulloch's recommendations by expanding this list to include special constables of private employers such as the TTC or universities. In addition to conducting criminal investigations into circumstances involving police officers and civilians that have resulted in serious injury, death, or reports of sexual assault, the OSIU's mandate would be expanded to investigate any time an officer discharges a firearm at an individual, and any charges related to a criminal offense uncovered in the course of an investigation. Further, the OSIU would be able to require police officers to comply with its investigations and will now be able to impose penalties for failure to do so. Next, the OIPRD would be renamed the Ontario Policing Complaints Agency. The agency would become the sole investigative body for all public complaints made against police officers, special constables, and in some cases, members of First Nations police, providing much-needed clarity to the public about where to submit complaints about police. This change would also mean that public complaints will now be handled independently of the involved police service. And finally, the OCPC would be renamed the Ontario Policing Discipline Tribunal and would be dedicated solely to adjudicating disciplinary matters involving police officers and special constables. But more than just changing the functions of the oversight bodies, true change must address the root cause of any bias. It will require a full cultural shift. And so, the proposed legislation would require oversight bodies to deliver training to their employees, which will go a long way to help tackle unconscious bias and improve their cultural competency, which would promote recognition and respect for our province's many diverse, multiracial, and multicultural communities, and the distinctive rights and vibrant cultures of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in our province. Finally, we would allow the oversight bodies to begin collecting and publicly reporting on demographic data, including race-based data, once detailed regulations are in place. As Justice Tulloch pointed out, this can help to identify key patterns that could point to issues like trends and deficiencies in officer training. Before I close, I would like to once again thank Justice Tulloch for his excellent recommendations. I would also like to recognize the many advocacy groups, some are here today, who have fought tirelessly for police oversight reform. The more than 1,500 individuals who shared their stories and experiences with the review team, as well as the hardworking individuals in Ontario's police for all that they do and will continue to do to keep our communities safe. I look forward to working with many of you here today as we continue to build a more modern policing oversight system that is open, accountable, and perhaps most importantly, has the full confidence of the police and the public they serve. Thank you, and both Minister Lalonde and I are now ready to answer any questions that you may have.
The Inspector General role is civilian. What will the qualifications do you have that position?
Excuse me, you'll have to say that again.
The Inspector General, that new position?
Yeah.
What will the qualifications be to get that position?
Well, actually, this is something that we will be working towards, actually, in terms of qualifications. Certainly, we want the biggest array of qualification. We want the best, the most qualified individual that will be able to help us in moving that position forward. It will be supported by a directorate. There'll be some staff associated with this. But the way I envision this is someone who has a broad array, I would say, of qualification, you know, from a mental health, from, I would even venture to say policing, a deep understanding of all the sector of the policing. So I think it's a little premature for me to, make any assumption of, but I would like the most qualified individual for this position. And it will be posted.
Minister Lalonde, when you talked about suspension without pay, you said as an interim measure in specific circumstances. What did you mean by that? What about it is interim?
I would say, so 10 months ago, I became the Minister of the Community Safety, and, this was probably the most discussed, one of the most discussed issues among all aspects of this new bill. And certainly there was lots of consultation and collaboration in trying to find the right balance where the officers, the chief, and the public would all find a way. So, for instance, and I'll try to put the steps forward for you, and you'll understand the interim measure, because that means that if someone is found after, so let's start from the beginning so you'll understand, I think. The chief cannot, by default, choose this function. And I want to be very clear that this will be made with a process. So, for instance, a chief of police feels that the officer should be suspended without pay. The chief would have to inform the officers within 60 days, a time frame. So there's a time frame where the officer would be notified of that decision of his chief. The officer would have two choices, either agree with the suspension or don't. If the officer chooses not to agree with this decision, Then the ORPRD, so the new, how you call it?
The Ontario Policing Complaints Agency.
Would, as an independent, could make the final decision. We have to understand that there would be court proceeding potentially and a verdict at the end of this decision. So the suspension would happen for the time of the duration, and if the officer is found non-guilty, then it would be reimbursed for, so that's why the time, it depends, you know, if an officer is found not guilty, we would reimburse that officer.
Once this law passes, if an officer is currently suspended with pay, could a chief stop that pay?
Well,
While the trial goes on, because some of these things are taking years to go through the process.
so this is moving forward. So my understanding of the process is if pass, this would give the chief a measure that they can suspend an officer for serious offenses while not performing, not while on duty, for instance. So I would not be able to say those that are currently. Certainly what we want is expedite the process to ensure that the fastest decision is made in those cases. The bill speaks for, if passed, for the next step of this process.
So this address the issue of carding, which is a big issue in the Black community.
So there was legislation passed on this. Currently, we've hired Justice Michael Tulloch to review the legislation in terms of ensuring that the legislation and working with our key partners, our policing, and this will be, my understanding, he will be bringing a report in 2019, January of 2019, according to the legislature.
Madame Lalonde, pourquoi est-ce que vous avez décidé de définir les rôles des policiers? Est-ce que les policiers étaient utilisés à mauvais escient?
Je ne dirais pas ça. C'est que si on regarde aujourd'hui la réalité, écoutez, j'ai eu l'opportunité depuis les derniers 10 mois de parler avec des policiers, d'aller dans leur auto, de me promener la nuit avec eux. Et ce qu'on voit, c'est que le type d'appel que les policiers doivent réagir a changé. On parle peut-être de, comme par exemple, la santé mentale. Donc, on a une population vulnérable et le policier se voit confronté à cette nouvelle réalité-là. Je vais vous dire que les policiers font un excellent travail. J'étais avec eux et je le sais. Mais est-ce que le policier est la seule personne qui peut aider dans un cas de santé mentale? On pourrait peut-être avoir outillé le policier avec, par exemple, une personne, une travailleuse sociale ou un travailleur social, une personne qui est intervenant en situation de crise. Donc, l'aspect du policier restera toujours important. Le policier fait partie de notre communauté, de nos communautés, mais il y a plusieurs effets, il y a plusieurs déterminants qui font en sorte qu'on doit regarder d'autres secteurs, d'autres comme l'éducation, la santé, qui vont aider le policier dans ses fonctions quotidiennes.
C'est quoi les fonctions d'un policier? Donc,
c'est ça. Donc c'est ça que nous allons définir lors du processus de réglementation. Donc, comme j'ai mentionné, c'est un processus que nous allons définir dans le processus de réglementation en partenariat avec les intervenants du milieu.
In English, could you give us some examples of what you see that would be core police duties?
Well, this is, okay, so this is something that will be consulted more broadly with our officers. What I will say is that we know that police officers, they are engaging with the new reality of the calls today. They do an extremely good job. And I was firsthand on a ride along with them. I met with police officers, and they have a new reality. For instance, our mental health component within our community. And certainly, that's a component where I think we all agree that the police officer responding could be supported with potentially someone who has a particular skill as a social worker, a crisis intervention worker. And that's why we're going to be looking at all this. But the role of policing will be defined in our regulation in partnership with our police services.
As for these changes, who are your partners? Where does the input come from? Suggestions to the minister, or the justice, or who are the others that you work with to come up with all these great ideas?
You're asking for the entire legislation or?
Just generally speaking, do you have community partners as well? Where does this come from?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've been working with a lot of people. Of course, our policing partners, police services are a big part of it, but we've been working with community groups, First Nations communities, academics who have done a lot of work in this area, the oversight bodies, the Human Rights Commission. I mean, the list goes on and on. As Minister Lalonde mentioned, this is a culmination of work that's been going on for almost 5 years. You may recall when I was the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services, we launched these consultation strategy for a safer Ontario. We held consultations all across the province. We received input in writing, and then there has been an ongoing conversation, not to mention the work, of course, that we received by Justice Tulloch on oversight. So this is a product of resources that we've been able to accumulate and conversations we've been able to have over the last few years. And in our view, this is probably the most significant transformation of policing in entire North America, and really puts Ontario in a leadership role as to what that modern 21st century policing looks like.
Minister, what is this going to do to a big issue that a lot of people have talked about, which is the cost of policing? Municipalities are facing these huge growing costs of policing, even though for the last 25 years the crime rate has been coming down. How is this going to make that cost any less?
So I'll go back with one of our key pillars, which is a community safety well-being plan. You know, police will always be, and I say this because I really believe, a core of our community safety. Communities are different across the province. It's not an all-size-fits-all. And what we're going to be doing is working and asking each municipalities to create a plan on their local needs, the risk, and what they are looking to help and to support. So for instance, if a community has a human right trafficking issue, well, those are the partners that we'll want around within the plan, and that will include our police. So the community and the municipality, I should say, will be instrumental in helping us because, yes, we have seen some decrease, but there's new and emerging situations such as cyber crimes. We're talking about human trafficking being one of a reality of the everyday. We're looking at drug and addictions issue. So it's not just about the police, it's about the community, and it's about ultimately preventing the crime before it occurs and ensuring that we are addressing this in a multi-sector approach to help our community.
But Minister, that's not at all clear. How is this actually going to get the costs of policing under control?
So again, as I said, in partnership with several organizations. So for instance, we've seen as part of our community safety well-being plan, where one of example is a situation table that was started. The situation table brings police officers, healthcare providers, education, a broad array of professional and experts around the table to address a particular instance or a particular situation or particular cases, if I may say. And what we want is prevent this person from either re-entering our justice system, having access and interaction with the justice, and ultimately stay in his community as a healthy citizen. So by doing this, all the long term will be that we'll have healthier, stronger community at the same time of maximizing all resources available within the community.
How are you going to respond to the criticism that you're likely to get from the police associations that you are reducing the scope of what police officers do. The previous criticism that they've said when these changes were being considered was that it's going to lead to a kind of privatization of policing, and that, you know, that it's not appropriate to reduce the duties that police officers do.
So I have the utmost respect for our police officers and association. We have worked tirelessly over the last few months with them. And I want to point that no, we are not looking at privatizing police services. I really want to make it very clear. Having said that, is our highly trained police officers the best person to be on a construction site in monitoring the construction of a site? That is the questions that we will be working together. But I say, when you call 911 and you need a police officer will respond to your need.
When might this take effect? What is the target? When are you hoping that this passes, and when will we see the actual changes?
Well,
We're tabling this today, and we want to start debating this legislation as soon as possible. And our hope will be if we can get this passed before holiday recess, that we can get that done, because there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of implementation.
Okay, thank you guys. I guess go to the next.
thank you very much. Thank you for all of you. Thank you.